This story is titled, "My Coworker Stole My Promotion, so I secretly applied to the parent company and became her boss 2 months later." I spent 5 years building my career at Richardson Manufacturing in Milwaukee, a mid-sized company that produces industrial equipment. At 31, I was leading special projects in the operations department, and everyone knew I had my eye on the senior operations manager position. My name is Mike, and I had sacrificed countless weekends and holidays to prove my worth. The position had been my goal since I started, and my boss Richard had all but promised it to me during our quarterly reviews. That's where Ashley comes in. She transferred from our Denver office 8 months ago, bringing her sunshine and smiles personality that seemed to charm everyone instantly. At 35, she had less experience in operations than me, but she had this way of taking credit for other people's work while making it seem completely innocent. I noticed it immediately how she'd mention projects I'd spearheaded during executive meetings, carefully wording things to make it sound like she'd been the driving force behind their success. Then, there was Tom, my closest work friend, and the head of quality control. At 42, he'd been with the company for over a decade and saw right through Ashley's act. He tried warning me about how she was always in Richard's office, having these long closed-door meetings that supposedly were about process improvement initiatives. But I was too focused on my projects to pay attention to office politics. I was working on a major equipment upgrade project that would save the company millions in operating costs. The research, planning, and initial implementation had taken me 6 months of extra hours and endless coordination with our suppliers. I had everything documented, every success metric tracked, and was just waiting for the final results to present to the board. What I didn't know then was that my world was about to be turned upside down in ways I never could have imagined. Looking back, I should have seen the signs the way Richard started being less available for our usual catch-ups, how Ashley always seemed to be leaving the conference room just as I was arriving for meetings, and the subtle shift in how some of the senior executives began treating me. But when you're in the middle of it all, sometimes the most obvious red flags just look like normal challenges to overcome. Little did I know that Ashley wasn't just playing office politics, she was orchestrating a complete takeover of everything I'd worked for. And Richard, the mentor I'd trusted for 5 years, was about to show his true colors in a way that would change the course of my entire career. But what happened next would set in motion a chain of events that nobody, especially not Ashley, could have predicted. The day everything fell apart started like any other Tuesday. I was preparing for my final presentation on the equipment upgrade project, confident that this would cement my promotion to senior operations manager. The preliminary data showed a 23% reduction in operating costs, even better than my initial projections. I had spent the morning triple-checking my slides when Tom rushed into my office, his face pale. He had overheard a conversation in the break room that made his stomach turn. Ashley was in Richard's office right now, presenting my project to the board. She had somehow gotten her hands on all my documentation, progress reports, and implementation plans. But here's the real kicker: she had been submitting weekly updates to Richard for the past 3 months, taking credit for overseeing the entire initiative. I felt the blood drain from my face as I pulled up my calendar. My board presentation had been mysteriously rescheduled to next week without my knowledge. Racing to the conference room, I arrived just in time to see Ashley wrapping up my presentation through the glass walls. The executives were nodding approvingly, and Richard was beaming at her like a proud father. What happened next was like watching a slow-motion train wreck. 2 days later, Richard called an all-hands meeting to announce the new senior operations manager. As Ashley stood there accepting congratulations, I noticed she was wearing the same emerald green blazer I had complimented her on the day she asked to learn more about my project methodology. But here's where it gets interesting. In the midst of my shock and anger, I received an unexpected email. Sarah, my old college roommate, who now worked at Global Industrial Solutions, our parent company, had reached out about catching up over coffee. At the time, I had no idea this seemingly innocent message would be my ticket to the sweetest revenge possible. That coffee meeting would reveal something about Ashley's past that she had worked very hard to keep hidden. And Richard? His smug smile wouldn't last long once certain information made its way to the corporate offices in Chicago. The game Ashley thought she had won was about to become much bigger than a simple promotion, and I was finally starting to understand the real players involved. That coffee meeting with Sarah changed everything. As we caught up, She casually mentioned that Global Industrial Solutions was secretly planning a major restructuring of their subsidiary companies, including Richardson Manufacturing. They were creating a new regional operations director position to oversee operations across 5 states, including Wisconsin and Colorado. The position hadn't been announced yet, but Sarah knew they were looking for someone with extensive experience in cost reduction and process improvement. But what really caught my attention was when Sarah mentioned Ashley's name. Apparently, Ashley's transfer from Denver hadn't been the career advancement move she claimed. Sarah had connections in the Denver office and knew the real story. Ashley had been quietly asked to transfer after several discrepancies were found in her project reports. Rather than face an investigation, she had accepted a lateral move to Milwaukee. I spent that night updating my resume, carefully documenting every project I'd led, including the equipment upgrade initiative. I had kept all my original files, timestamps, and email trails. I also added a detailed breakdown of the cost-saving methodology. I developed the same one Ashley had presented as her own. Instead of confronting her or Richard, I submitted my application directly to Global Industrial Solutions through Sarah's referral. The interview process was intense, 4 rounds with various executives, including a final presentation to the board in Chicago. I presented my true track record, including the projects Ashley had claimed. The board was particularly interested in my equipment upgrade initiative, especially when I could answer detailed technical questions that demonstrated my intimate knowledge of the project's every aspect. But the real bombshell dropped during my background check. The HR team discovered that Ashley had a pattern of similar behavior at 3 previous companies. She would transfer laterally just as questions about her project claims started surfacing. Richard had never bothered to dig deeper into her references, too charmed by her polished presentation style. What happened next would send shockwaves through both the Milwaukee and Denver offices. But more importantly, it would teach Ashley and Richard a lesson about underestimating the quiet guy who always did the real work. The corporate chess game was about to enter its final phase, and for once, I held all the powerful pieces. 3 weeks after my final interview, I received the call I'd been hoping for. I had landed the Regional Operations Director position at Global Industrial Solutions. The salary was double what I was making, and I would be overseeing operations at 5 manufacturing facilities, including both Milwaukee and Denver. But the best part? They wanted me to start immediately, and keep it confidential until the official announcement. During my 2 weeks notice period at Richardson, I watched Ashley strutting around the office, implementing changes that made no operational sense. She had already taken credit for 2 more of my ongoing projects, and was clearly struggling to understand the technical aspects when suppliers called with questions. Richard remained oblivious, congratulating her on her innovative thinking, while the department's efficiency metrics started to slip. Tom was the only one I told about my new position. He could barely contain his excitement, but managed to keep it under wraps. He also shared some interesting information. Ashley had started pushing for his replacement, claiming his quality control methods were outdated. She had even brought in a consultant from her previous company to evaluate the department. The consultant, as it turned out, was an old friend of hers who had helped cover her tracks in Denver. But the most satisfying moment came when I discovered that Ashley had submitted my cost-saving methodology to an industry journal, claiming it as her own innovation. The article was scheduled to be published next month, complete with her photo and an extensive interview about her revolutionary approach to operations management. She had no idea that this attempt at industry recognition would eventually become the final nail in her professional coffin. The day before my last day at Richardson, Ashley called a department meeting to announce her new vision for operations. As she stood there, confidently presenting a 5-year plan that was basically a watered-down version of proposals I'd made months ago, I sat quietly in the back of the room, knowing that in just a few days, her world would come crashing down. But even I couldn't have predicted the chain of events that would unfold once the corporate announcement was made. The corporate announcement came on a Monday morning, exactly 1 week after my quiet departure from Richardson. I had been working from Global's Chicago office, preparing for my first major move as regional director. The company-wide email went out at 9 a.m. sharp, accompanied by my professional headshot and a detailed outline of my new role overseeing operations across 5 facilities. The timing couldn't have been more perfect. Ashley was in the middle of her first major operations review meeting with the Milwaukee team when the news broke. According to Tom, who was present, she nearly choked on her coffee when my name and new title flashed across her phone screen. The color drained from her face as she read that I would be directly overseeing both the Milwaukee and Denver facilities, including her position. Richard's reaction was equally priceless. He immediately tried calling his contacts at corporate, apparently attempting to raise concerns about my appointment. But he quickly discovered that his influence didn't extend nearly as far as he had imagined. His calls went unreturned, and his emails received only brief, formal responses confirming my appointment. But the real drama unfolded when Ashley tried to do damage control. She hastily requested the industry journal withhold her article about her cost-saving methodology, claiming she needed to make revisions. However, the issue had already gone to print. She then attempted to reach out to her old Denver connections to ensure her version of events there would hold up under any potential scrutiny from her new boss me. What she didn't know was that I had spent my first week reviewing every major project and personnel decision across all 5 facilities. I had already uncovered 3 more instances where she had taken credit for other people's work in Denver. More surprisingly, I discovered that Richard had received warnings about her behavior from the Denver office, but had chosen to ignore them, likely because her presence helped him take credit for our department's successes with his own superiors. The stage was set for my first official visit to the Milwaukee facility as regional director. But before that could happen, Ashley made a desperate move that would backfire spectacularly, proving that sometimes people really do dig their own graves. In a desperate attempt to save herself, Ashley made her boldest move yet. She sent an urgent email to Global Industrial Solutions Executive Board, attempting to discredit me. She claimed that I had sabotaged several key projects before leaving Richardson, deleted crucial operational data, and had a history of taking credit for other people's work, essentially accusing me of everything she had done herself. She also attached a folder of evidence, which turned out to be heavily edited versions of my original project documents, manipulated to make it appear as if she had been the original author. In her panic, she had failed to notice that the metadata on these documents still contained traces of the original authorship and timestamps. It was amateur hour, and she had just handed me everything I needed on a silver platter. The corporate response was swift, but not in the way Ashley had hoped. Global's IT department easily verified the original creation dates and authorship of all the documents. They also discovered that Ashley had accessed and copied my files late at night on several occasions, well before she claimed to have initiated any of these projects. But the biggest surprise came from an unexpected source. Jenny, a quiet accountant in the Denver office, reached out to me directly. She had documented evidence of Ashley attempting to take credit for her cost analysis models at their previous company. Jenny had stayed silent all this time out of fear of retaliation, but seeing Ashley's meteoric rise at Richardson had finally pushed her to come forward. Meanwhile, Richard was desperately trying to distance himself from the situation. He sent a formal email to corporate HR claiming he had been misled by Ashley's credentials and references. But his attempt at self-preservation came too late. During my review of the Denver transfer documents, I had found emails proving he had ignored explicit warnings about Ashley's history of professional misconduct. The day before my scheduled visit to the Milwaukee facility, Ashley tried one last desperate move that would prove to be her final mistake. She had no idea that her hasty attempt at damage control would not only fail spectacularly, but would also expose a much larger corporate conspiracy that reached far beyond our regional offices. Ashley's final desperate move was both bold and spectacularly misguided. She reached out to Bradley, the CEO of our largest competitor, Excellence Manufacturing. Her pitch was simple. She would bring her innovative, cost-saving methodology, actually my work, to their company, along with detailed insider knowledge of Richardson's operations. What she didn't know was that Bradley and I had worked together years ago at my first job, and we still occasionally met at industry conferences. Bradley immediately forwarded me her entire email thread, which included confidential Richardson manufacturing data she had planned to share. This wasn't just unprofessional anymore, it was corporate espionage. Even more damning, the emails revealed that this wasn't her first attempt at such a move. She had tried similar tactics when leaving her position in Denver, which explained the mysterious gaps in her employment history. The morning of my scheduled visit to Milwaukee arrived. I walked into the Richardson building at exactly 9 a.m., accompanied by 2 members of Global's corporate HR team and their legal counsel. The look on Ashley's face when I walked into her office, my old office, was indescribable. She quickly tried to compose herself, plastering on that fake smile I had come to know so well, but her hands were shaking as she offered me a seat. That's when Richard burst in, his face red and sweating. He had just received word that Corporate was launching a full investigation into his hiring practices and project oversight. In his panic, he blurted out something that caught everyone by surprise. Apparently, Ashley had been recommended to him by someone high up in Global's executive team, someone who had been orchestrating similar placement schemes across multiple subsidiaries. The revelation sent shockwaves through the corporate office. This wasn't just about one ambitious manager stealing credit anymore. It was about a systematic attempt to place certain individuals in key positions across the company's subsidiaries. The investigation was about to expand far beyond our regional drama, reaching into the highest levels of corporate leadership. But before that investigation could begin, Ashley made one final, desperate attempt to salvage her career, an attempt that would lead to the most surprising twist of all. In a stunning turn of events, Ashley revealed that she had been working as an unwitting pawn in a much larger scheme. James Wilson, Global Industrial Solutions Executive Vice President, had been running a complex network of placed employees across various subsidiaries. These employees would create artificial inefficiencies in their departments, making their facilities appear less profitable than they actually were. The goal? To devalue these subsidiaries before a planned corporate sell-off where Wilson and his associates would purchase them at reduced prices through a separate holding company. Ashley broke down completely, pulling out a recorded conversation with Wilson from 3 years ago. She had kept it as insurance, never intending to use it unless absolutely necessary. The recording revealed how Wilson had orchestrated her moves from company to company, using her ambition and lack of technical expertise to create plausible cover for the operational problems they needed. Richard, upon hearing the recording, turned ghost white. He had been promoted to his position through Wilson's influence as well, though he claimed he never knew the full extent of the scheme. His role had been simple: look the other way when Wilson's placed employees, like Ashley, made questionable decisions or took credit for others' work. The corporate investigation expanded immediately. Wilson and several other executives were placed on administrative leave. As for Ashley, despite her cooperation in exposing the larger conspiracy, her own actions couldn't be overlooked. She resigned that afternoon, her career in operations management effectively over. Richard, too, was asked to step down, his years of willful negligence finally catching up with him. Tom was promoted to Richard's position, his years of maintaining honest quality control standards finally recognized. Jenny from Denver was brought in as the new senior operations manager, her past work finally acknowledged. The Industry Journal published a retraction of Ashley's article, with a new piece featuring the true story of the cost-saving methodology and its actual creator, me. 6 months later, I sat in my office in Chicago, looking out over the city skyline. The restructuring of Global Industrial Solutions was complete, with new leadership and transparent operational standards in place. The Milwaukee facility was now one of our top-performing sites, with Tom and Jenny's honest leadership setting new benchmarks for efficiency. I sometimes think about Ashley, and how her desperate ambition made her vulnerable to manipulation by people like Wilson. The last I heard, she had moved to Arizona, working in a completely different industry. Richard had taken early retirement, his reputation in the manufacturing sector permanently tarnished. As for me, I found something better than revenge validation. Every facility under my direction now operates with strict ethical guidelines and transparent project attribution. The quiet ones, who do the real work, are finally getting the recognition they deserve. Sometimes, the best revenge isn't about destroying your enemies, but about building something better from the ashes of their schemes. The corporate world can be ruthless, but integrity and patience usually win in the long run. You just have to be willing to play the long game and recognize that sometimes, the path to justice takes unexpected turns. In the end, I got much more than a promotion. I got the chance to reshape an entire company culture. And that's worth more than any personal vendetta could ever be.